这些人要么丢失了，要么找不着了，要么被抓了，要么进在监狱里，要么自杀了。而且绝大多数人都有一个共同的死法，叫堕落死。因为那里有一个独裁的政党，叫共产党。海航是代表共产党在西方的一个间谍平台、洗钱平台和对西方政治进行蓝金黄的渗透平台。
1年多已经卖了3500多亿，是全世界数第1号。
Over 2 events, one that happened in London earlier in the spring, and then one that happened in Turkey several weeks ago. The one in the spring was the poisoning of Russian dissidents or Russian citizens in London. And the one the last couple of weeks was looks like the killing of a Washington Post columnist, Khashoggi, in Turkey. And both these situations, as tragic as they were, created an international media firestorm. Well, what we're here today, and Miles Guo is going to walk you through, is something that's quite frankly stunning. Literally hundreds, if not thousands, of the best and the brightest of the Chinese people are either missing, have been imprisoned, have committed suicide, have died under mysterious circumstances, or have had their assets taken from them and are impoverished. And the world's media today has not connected the dots, or there's literally been no outrage. Now, this is not 1 or 2 isolated cases, and these are not people who are not insignificant in media, in their corporate life, in the financial life, in government, in the military. It's across the board, and it's men and it's women. It is absolutely stunning that this could go on in a culture, a global culture that's connected by media, and there's literally crickets. Well, that ends today. And it ends because one man's prepared to stand up and say, he's not prepared to tolerate this, and he will use every asset at his disposal to bring truth to this, to make sure the Chinese people do not come under any more assault as they're already coming from the Chinese Communist Party and the senior leadership of the CCP. Today is about recklessness and accountability. As many people in the world, and particularly in the world's financial centers, are starting to understand, the Chinese Communist Party and the senior leadership of the CCP have acted financially recklessly over the last 10, 15, or 20 years. And that printing of currency and increasing of debt and everything that that's causing and will cause in the future, I believe in a coming financial crisis, can be seen in the example that Miles Guo is going to walk through today. We have one of the, if not the largest financial company in the world, that has essentially been created from a very small company, and from 2014 to 2018 became, I think, arguably the largest financial company in the world, with the aid and support of major Western financial institutions and major financial players in the West. And the question has to be, how reckless was this? Who benefited from this? Who owns this? Who took these assets from the Chinese people? Who profited off this? Who looked the other way?
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to the show, The Legal Battle of the Century. I'm your host, Rachel, and today is 2022, October 17. With me in the live broadcasting room is my co-host, Nicole. Nicole, do you want to say something to our audience before we start?
Oh, hi, Rachel. Hi, KK, and hi, everyone. And I hope you are all well, and welcome to today's show.
Yes, and yes, thank you, KK, because KK has always been there from the beginning of this show as the OBS supporter. So thank you. So today we're on the episode 21st. I didn't know when I started this I could go this far on Wang Jian's death. That's the main topic for the past, I think, 8 episodes, because it's kind of a, complicated case, because we have to provide you with a lot of background information on HNA. So today, we're hoping to give you all the details about Wang Jian's death. Mainly, we're going to touch on 3 main things in this episode. One is what happened after Wang Jian's death, and how actually did on Earth Wang Jian die, according to Miles. And also we wanted to answer the question why Wang Jian has to die in France, not in China, because we know, China, every year we have so many people that the CCP officials die out of a natural death. So why CCP did not want to eliminate Wang Jian back home, which a lot of people would say could avoid all the commotions. It will be a lot easier to do that. But we're trying to answer this question because Miles shared his view on this as well in 2018 August. So we're going to share that with you. And then so on the slide number 2, before we start, just want to kind of re-emphasize, refresh, our audience's mind where we are and where we have been prior to this episode. So we were on the topic of Wang Qishan. We think he is the biggest, the most successful kleptocrats under the CCP kleptocracy. And he's HNA is basically a company that has seen tremendous growth in particularly only 3 years, where their assets got 20,000 times bigger. So it's unheard of, unprecedented growth. So we have been focusing on him and his political struggle with Xi Jinping, which is the president of the PRC, and yesterday was the very first day of the opening of the 20th National Congress back in China. Maybe we touch a little bit on that today in our show, we'll see. And so we have talked about Wang Qishan and HNA's rise. And then we talked about ownership of HNA and architecture art project. And today we're still focusing on the white glove's fate, the death of Wang Jian. So the first question in our show I wanted to answer is this. So let's go to the slide number 3. So why did Wang Jian die in France, not China? Nicole, I know you did some readings and maybe you have your own views or opinions on this based on what we learned from Miles. What's your take on this?
Chinese government plausible deniability, and all the murders and the murderers were overseas things. And then the other thing is, I think the asset transfer was their key goal and the objection of their action. And because I think after transferring the assets, all key information about the Wang Jian's death will be closed, and all U.S. investigations, because Wang Jian is a U.S. green card holder. So will be blocked, and all responsibility can be pushed onto Wang Jian. I think these points are also from Miles Guo's previous broadcasting, and also remind me in some ways. I think there are some parallels with the murder of Neil Haywood, and he's another kind of white gloves, and who was murdered by his powerful client, and I think is Neil Haywood. He was. He was killed by Bo Xilai's wife, Gu Kailai. I remember the English teacher, exactly. So I think the murder being covered up by pressure and influence on the local authority. I think they tried to kill him in China instead of in England because he's a UK citizen. And I think that's my thought. Yeah.
You are not familiar with Bo Xilai, you should look back 8 years ago. Not 8, 10 years ago, right? Right before, I think, where Xi Jinping took his power in 2012. That's, again, another, never-ending CCP internal faction struggle, which people has to die and people has to be silenced using assassination or various different murder plots, which, if we have enough time, we will touch on that in today's topic. We'll see. If we don't, then we will say this in the next episode. So thank you, Nico. I think you're very bang on the reason, because on the if we go to the slide number 4, on August 5th, 2018, when Miles was having his meal on Lady May, which is the luxury yacht that he used, prior to the restraining order that ordered by the New York Supreme Court for civil contempt, because we know that we started this show because we want to talk about the PAX law case against Miles Guo, and during the 5 years legal battle, and in 2021, I believe they successfully, in 2022, early 2022, they successfully, charged Miles with, not charged, but they successfully get a judge order of a civil contempt, and which regarding the Lady May, and the judge fined, I think it was 1.2, how much the judge fined is 126 million. Yes, 126 million US dollars for not returning the Lady May, the boat, back to the New York jurisdiction. But a lot of the case details we would touch on later on. But today, I just wanted to let you know that Miles actually shared this information on the boat of Lady May on August 5th, 2018. So there's key points that I think Nicole has already touched, which is the money, right? So as a holder of, as a co-chairman of the HNA group, the conglomerate that holds billions of assets and 600 billion revenue every year, like they have so much. And Wang Jian is the one that, handled all those deals and transfers and signing documents. I mean, he's the key person. And so in order to get Wang Jian transfer his, equities, like he had 15% of the HNN stock equities in his name, and also other assets that we don't know, like real estate or other company equities we don't know. But in order to take this away from Wang Jian, they have to get Wang Jian sign those letters or trust agreement documents, whatever that is, before he died, right? So that is why, and also Wang Jian is not it's smart. He knows that he has to, he can't do this in China, because if he did sign every paper in China, he might be gone. And also jurisdiction-wise, there's a lot of regulations. You have to go abroad to do those transfers, especially when those assets are aboard. That's exactly like Alibaba Ma Yun. Nicole, you know that, right? Alibaba was, according to the main media back in China, say Alibaba had 2 vacations in Spain. Remember that, on his luxury yacht called Zen, Z-E-N, his own personal luxury yacht. But according to Miles, that was just the front cover. What happened behind is Ma Yun has already been detained, under house arrest by the CCP. His whole family has been controlled by the CCP, and the CCP want him to transfer his assets back to his master, his kleptocrat's master. So that is why they used, I think Miles mentioned about 20 secret agents, escort him on his luxury yacht in Spain twice. They actually went there twice to get him sign all the documents that would enable him to transfer all the money back to the master. Because after all, Wang Jian and Ma Yun, Jack Ma, they're just the white gloves. So that's the very first point. So they have to do it in France, because Wang Jian otherwise would not do it in China, or there's any other banking regulations. We don't know that he has to sign the paper somewhere else. And the second point is a key point here. Back to what Nicole mentioned about, the murder of Bo Xilai's wife's English teacher. So this is to do with faction struggle. As we mentioned previously, there's a lot of turmoil between, the rivalries between Xi's loyalties, because she used to, prior to take the role as the president. He worked previously. He worked in Zhejiang province, and prior to that, he worked in Fujian province as a provincial governor. So he has accumulated his network in that two province. So when he moved to a highest position in central government in CCP, he brought his loyalties with him together. So a lot of those loyalties are trying to get promoted within the system. So their number one rivalry is Wang's faction. Wang stands for Wang Qishan, which is actually the controller behind the HNA. So in order to preventing another political rivalry from using Wang Jian's death as an excuse to attack Wang's faction, Wang Qishan's faction, they thought they better avoid killing Wang Jian or murdering Wang Jian in China. Okay, so these are the two explicit reasons that mentioned by Miles on August 5th. However, I put a third reason there because I think throughout the other broadcastings of Miles, not on that day, but other days, he did mention how bad the CCP's infiltration was into, various countries, not only France. So confidence, their absolute confidence in CCP's infiltration in French political and judicial system. And this is why we started the whole show, is because we really wanted to expose those CCP's infiltration and their interference in the sovereign country, especially the free and democratic societies nowadays, how badly their political system, their judicial system, their economic system, their media, information, social media, every system you can think of that has been polluted by the evil CCP. The doctrines or whatever the ideologies they're holding. So this is the reason why Wang Jian has to die in France. They picked France not by coincidence. Okay, so they actually calculated and they actually thought this through. As we mentioned, Meng Hongwei, the president of Interpol at that time, was based in France, Lyon. So that's another asset they could actually tapping on. Aside from the spy intelligence and covert operative network they have already been weaving in French, like the key person we mentioned about Daniel Weil, like Huabing Gerard Hua, the biggest arms dealer in France, and also the Asia Pacific CEO of Allianz, the biggest insurance company. I'm not sure. I shouldn't say biggest because I don't know whether they're biggest or not, but they are the first entering the Hong Kong market that's selling insurance to Hong Kong residents, with the blessing of Wang Qishan, who is the guy that controlled pretty much all the financial and commerce back in China at that time. So this about why Wang Jian has to die. So Nicole, do you have anything to add or comment?
Yes, thank you, Rachel. And I definitely agree with you. I think from Wang Jian's case, you can see the CCP's infiltration in the French political and judicial system, because how fast the police, they close the case and they don't they don't let any kind of outside, they don't do any investigation or anything. And they delete all the kind of records and do not let you to get access to them. All these things show CCP's infiltration. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a very good addition, because in last episode we mentioned about the French police and investigation. They closed the case in 6 days. That's unheard of. With all those contradictory testimonies and with all those unanswered questions, and they actually closed the case and saying, falling and death. So that's unheard of. And throughout the investigation, to the first responder, to the police, to the firefighter, to later on the morgue, to the coroner, to the judicial inspection system, through the whole system, the judicial system, you can see that they are completely, infiltrated by the CCP. So this is very sad. This is not only a failure for Chinese people, but also failure for French, for French citizen, for the international citizen who upholds justice. That's why Miles has been calling for a reinvestigation of the whole thing, right? So he's trying to establish enough suspicious point to allow the American government and the French government to reestablish the case, which I think he managed to do that. Because later on in 2008 September, I remember in one of his live stream broadcasting, he did mention that the French government agreed to reopen, but nothing came out of that reopen of that case. But I think we probably put more hope in United States, because I know, if we ever have a chance to fight this case and the people ever to know the truth, we'll probably put a lot of weight on the U.S. judicial system. Although the U.S. judicial system today is also under, unfortunately, the infiltration of the CCP. And later on throughout the show, we will mention, we will share with you those information that we are aware of about the individual cases. Okay, so let's move on to the slide number 5. So here, I want to actually invite Nicole to commenting on this, because I just wanted to let people know this. We will conclude the death of Wang Jian throughout the 2018, which, the year that the death occurred, all the way to the 2019 and 2020 Mile School. In his various broadcastings and live streams, he mentioned Wang Jian ongoingly, continuously, sporadically, and because the information surfaced at a different time, so he actually shared a lot of information, some of them even contradictory. But that doesn't matter, because the new evidence comes in, and then he just shared that with people, because some of those prior things that he shared, because it largely is his personal opinion, but surfaced. So he actually correct them and then say, this is the later on evidence that we have. So that's why, as of today, we don't have a very conclusive outcomes for this investigation, but we kind of have speculations and ideas how did this happen. So we're going to share with you in our show, but we apologize for any personal human errors that could happen, because me and Nicole, because we have to read a large amount of information and kind of synthesize and organize in a way that makes sense, and omit those things that might perceived contradictory, but later on, with the new information, we might want to just only share, we might selectively only share the
找不着了，要么被抓了，要么进在监狱里，要么